I just remember I liked you, and he was like, not now. I'm married now.
What if the woman you thought had it all, fame, love, family, was quietly losing the very things that made her feel human? Nicole Kidman wasn't just building a Hollywood legacy. Behind closed doors, she was grieving the slow, silent disappearance of everything she once called home. A father gone in an instant, a mother lost after years of fading light, children drifting like memories, and yet, she never broke. No headlines, no drama. Just a woman walking through unspeakable sorrow, with the grace of someone still choosing to believe in beauty. I still don't know when everything went quiet, but one morning, she woke up to a life that felt erased. And that mystery is where this story begins. From dazzling red carpets today, smiling beside Keith Urban, Nicole Kidman carries a chapter she's never revealed. After 11 years beside Tom Cruise, everything snapped shut. No warning, no wave goodbye. One day, she vanished from his world and stayed silent for over 2 decades. Now, at 56, she's finally breaking that silence, and what she's sharing has stunned everyone. What really happened behind the scenes, and who was pulling the strings? Stick with me, because the answer might surprise you. Before Hollywood ever knew her name, before the Oscars, before Big Little Lies, Nicole was a little girl feeling utterly out of place. Born June 20th, 1967, in Honolulu, yes, Hawaii, she was the daughter of Anthony, a budding psychologist, and Janelle, a nursing student. Just 3 years later, the Kidmans moved back to Sydney, bringing with them that dual identity that would quietly shape her outlook. Their home was a sanctuary of intellect and empathy. Think open conversations, books lining the walls, and a gentle insistence on curiosity. But behind that warmth, a child grappled with a stutter so profound it forced her voice into retreat. Only the stage soothed that pain. At age 3, ballet entered her life, and with it, a secret freedom. The discipline of dance, the sweep of music. It unlocked something she'd carry forever. School mattered less. Lane Cove Public felt ordinary. North Sydney girls felt confining. And her tall frame, red curls, and pale skin all felt like unspoken spotlight. She was different, and she sensed it. But those very differences ripened into her greatest asset, an ability to embody anyone who wasn't herself. Her parents, seeing her flicker of power on stage, enrolled her in the Australian Theatre for Young People, where she found Naomi Watts, her first true friend in the business, and someone who would remind her that being different could feel like belonging. At just 14, she landed a small part in Bush Christmas. 2 years later, at 16, she dropped out of school to pursue acting full-time, a bold move backed by unwavering parental belief. For a girl who once couldn't speak freely, this was more than brave, it was transformative. Teenagers can be awkward, Nicole admitted later in interviews, but she learned to channel that awkwardness on camera, finding empathy in roles where others fumbled. In her hands, vulnerability became power. By the late 80s and early 90s, Nicole was no longer hiding. In BMX Bandits, she caught the eye of agents. Then came Dead Calm, a tense thriller shot off the coast of Australia that demanded every bit of her quietly burning intensity. When Days of Thunder landed in 1990 and Tom Cruise walked on set, the world paused. Suddenly, she found herself not just a co-star, but a subject of tabloid fascination. Rumors swirled about their chemistry, but Nicole refused to be sidelined as just Cruise's girlfriend. She was building a craft, not a gossip headline. Then came To Die For in 1995. As Suzanne Stone, a weather reporter willing to do anything for fame, Nicole delivered a performance so fearless, it swept her first Golden Globe. And that's when Hollywood stopped seeing her just as a pretty face. She was an artist with teeth. The next leap felt inevitable. In 1999, she said yes to Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. That film was unlike anything she'd done before. Psychological, puzzling, raw. She'd dared to go where others wouldn't, and it paid off in full. The momentum carried into the early 2000s. The Others in 2001 had her delivering a solo, haunting performance that carried the film and earned her acclaim. Moulin Rouge followed the same year, transforming her into a tragic, magnetic sensation. Her first Oscar nomination came, and it felt richly deserved. Then came the career-defining moment, The Hours in 2002. Playing Virginia Woolf, she melted into every nuance of loneliness, yearning, and fragile brilliance. And her Oscar win felt both personal and universal. And yet, she didn't rest. Nicole plunged into daring territory with Lars von Trier's Dogville in 2003 and Birth in 2004, both emotionally intricate and polarizing. She shifted gears with Cold Mountain and The Interpreter, then embraced Sweeping Scale in Australia in 2008. She'd moved from shy kid to chameleon actress, commanding empathy in roles that spanned eras and continents. By 2010, another transformation was underway. In Rabbit Hole, she played a grieving mother with devastating precision, earning yet another Oscar nomination. And off-screen, she co-founded Blossom Films, stepping behind the camera as a producer. She wasn't just shaping her story, she was shaping hers and others. The next chapter extended onto screens small and large. Lion in 2016 earned her acclaim and yet another Oscar nod. Then came Big Little Lies in 2017. Her portrayal of Celeste Wright, a woman living with emotional scars, landed her an Emmy and Golden Globe, and tied her to one of TV's most acclaimed series. The momentum didn't slow. Aquaman in 2018 let her embody regal strength, while Bombshell in 2019 tapped into the era's shifting cultural undercurrents and earned more praise. In 2021, she disappeared entirely into Lucille Ball in Being the Ricardos, earning a fifth Oscar nomination and reminding us just how layered her talent is. There's something powerful about watching someone who once couldn't finish a sentence own a room so completely. But behind her spotlight, whispers circulated. Was Nicole always her own person? Or was she, at times, following someone else's script? That question circles back to the relationship that defined her in the 90s. 11 years next to Tom Cruise, and then nothing. Silent. Gone. Did she choose that? Or was she pushed? Now, she's opened up, and the implications are rattling. She's speaking at last, and what she reveals sets the stage for everything that follows. Every role, every award, every red carpet. Once, she was hiding from her own voice. Now, she has a voice too strong to ignore. But there's more to come. Her story isn't over. It's just shifting tone. If you thought you knew her rise, wait until you hear what she's saying now and why it changes everything. The applause fades, but the echoes linger. And when the lights dim, a different Nicole Kidman emerges. We see not a polished star, but a resilient woman who stumbled through heartbreak. Grit hidden behind a practiced smile. In 2023, she shattered expectations with Special Ops. Lioness, commanding audiences with her quiet ferocity in a story inspired by real CIA missions. Its debut pulled nearly 6 million viewers globally in 24 hours, a record for Paramount+. Her performance wasn't just a role. It was proof that Nicole had reclaimed control. And that was only the beginning. Then came Expats in early 2024, a 6-episode Prime Video drama crafted by Lulu Wang and produced by Nicole's own Blossom Films Reviews, praised it as emotionally raw and hauntingly authentic, with critics calling Nicole's turn as Margaret a tour de force. Others found her delivery unsettling, noting its deliberate awkwardness, a creative choice, perhaps, that only deepened the mystery of this woman adrift between grief and privilege. But that ambiguity was the hook, because when someone as calculated as Nicole lets her guard down, the world leans in. You'll remember Margaret's nightmare, a missing child in the chaos of Hong Kong's markets. With tension threading through every slow-burn scene, Expats dared to expose the fragility of motherhood and the fragility of self. And despite some criticism that Nicole's visage looked frozen or plastic to viewers, countless others applauded the cinematography, the nuanced storytelling, and a silent performance that played like a pulse beneath the screen. So, what was Expats really telling us about Nicole? Or was she telling us about herself? Because behind the glamorous image, there was always tension. After her marriage to Tom Cruise unraveled, no drama, just silence, she found herself carrying a guilt heavier than any spotlight. Their life had promised perfection, but under that sheen, cracks began. Miscarriages followed, and adoption felt like a desperate repair. Isabella and Connor arrived in the early 90s, bridge builders in a marriage that leaned on them to remain standing. But even as a devoted mother, she admitted she felt invisible. I loved him, but I also forgot who I was. It was a confession tethered by grief. And for anyone watching, it was a hook into the sadness she had hidden. And then came the scariest silence of all, when custody became a quiet wedge. Tom filed first, and soon the children were living with their father, pursuing the faith he had embraced, Scientology, a path Nicole had never followed. She was no longer the center of their world. They chose to live with their father. That was their decision, she said calmly. But inside, the ache was anything but calm. A mother's heart silently ruptured. No courtroom fireworks, just a slow, crushing drift. Into that void stepped Keith Urban. She and Keith found each other like two survivors stumbling into a clearing. He, reeling from personal upheavals of his own, she, scarred from loss and longing. When their wedding day arrived, it seemed less like a fairy tale and more like a quiet pact of mutual repair. But the next chapter brought more trials. Keith entered rehab just months into their marriage, and she didn't leave. She stood by him, not because of expectation, but because she knew what it meant to feel untethered. And she knew how much it helped to have someone stand steady beside you. Motherhood, once a dream steeped in pain, finally bloomed. Sunday Rose was born in 2008 after years of treatments, tears, and quiet nights spent staring into an empty nursery. But that joy came tinged with terror. She couldn't breastfeed. The fear hit her like a blaze. Had she failed again? She remembers asking herself, "Where is my milk? What is happening?" Desperate, she sat in darkness while holding her daughter, terrified she'd lose her this time too. It was a raw, heartbreaking moment, a moment she could never hide. 2 years later, Faith Margaret entered the world via surrogacy. Whether born to you, adopted, or carried by someone else, they are your children, Nicole said, voice steady but soft, as if this truth had been earned through every tear and every hopeful thunder of her heart. And yet, just as pieces seemed to fit, another crisis struck. In 2020, Australian wildfires edged too close to home. The smoke, the helicopters, the fear. All of it spilled onto camera when she visited the affected region. Watching her cry was like watching a nation's grief reflected in one face. Not just a celebrity, but a citizen whose homeland was burning. These events shaped her in ways no award ever could. Each blow, each public moment, each quiet breakdown, Nicole absorbed them all and carried them forward in ways that would later fuel her most daring roles. She understood grief, loss, and the primal scramble to rebuild after everything shatters. These raw truths spilled over into special ops, Lioness, expats, and everything she produced through Blossom Films. Her choices weren't just artistic. They were personal reckonings with survival, with identity, with power reclaimed from pain. Now, as we move toward the final leg of this story, remember this. Nicole Kidman is no longer constructing narratives she's been handed. She's constructing narratives she's lived. Each scene, each line, each stutter or silence is part of a woman still stitching back her world. She always knew everything could vanish in an instant, but nothing prepared her for losing the people who built her. In 2014, her anchor, Dr. Anthony Kidman, died suddenly while visiting her sister in Singapore after a fall, a shock that reverberated through her world. He had been her emotional fortress, the first person to believe in her, and when he was gone, a part of her home was erased. Then, in September 2024, her mother Janelle passed away after a prolonged illness. Almost a decade between them. Yet for Nicole, there was no pause in heartbreak, only a deepening void. When she spoke quietly in an interview last year, she admitted she often wakes at 3 a.m., crying and gasping from grief. A stark reminder that some wounds never dissolve, they just grow quieter. Her own words cut through the screen. "There is no one left behind me to call home. What remains now are memories, and the spaces they used to fill." That silent ache makes everything else, the awards, the global fame, feel secondary. And yet, the thing people might find most unexpected is how every piece of her sorrow became a piece of her strength. She never needed a hero role. Her real life turned her into one. Years of rebuilding would lead her to the biggest recognition of her career, the American Film Institute's Lifetime Achievement Award in 2024, making her the first Australian woman to ever receive it. Over 150 awards and 359 nominations later, including 6 Golden Globes and 2 Emmys, her journey isn't defined by trophies. It's defined by the stories she chooses to tell, the lives she's honored, the truths she's laid bare through performance. There's a transformation here worth reflecting on. She went from a girl silenced by shyness to an actress who mastered silence on screen, using pauses and raw stares to speak volumes. She played roles of abandonment, inner collapse, grief, and the world watched her rise beyond those shadows into a woman who brings her scars into every character she embodies. In Lion, her role as an adoptive mother wasn't just acting, it was an emotional tribute to her own children, a role that reignited buried fragments of her soul. But Nicole's reach extends beyond cinema. In 2006, she became a UN Women Goodwill Ambassador, lending her voice, heart, and time to global campaigns, and personally funding initiatives through UNICEF, the Red Cross, and Women's Cancer Research. More telling was her pledge in 2017 to work with at least one female director every 18 months, a promise she over-delivered on, collaborating with 27 women directors through her Blossom Films. That commitment was honored again in 2025, when she received the Women in Motion Award, for championing women's voices in cinema. Today, at 57, she's turned her spotlight inward. Life slows down. Cooking dinner with Keith, listening to Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret play in quiet corners of their Nashville home. Their marriage, forged not in perfection, but in shared healing, marks almost 2 decades of partnership. We do not try to be a model couple. We just want a life that feels full on our own terms, she once said. As for Isabella and Connor, her eldest children, space and distance have defined their relationship, but she speaks of them with gentle respect and unbroken hope, an invisible thread of love stretching across continents. Yet Nicole's world is also one of extraordinary material success. She and Keith Urban share a global real estate empire, estimated at over $80 million, including a sprawling Nashville estate, Beverly Hills home, Sydney penthouses, an Australian farm, and 2 Manhattan apartments. One featuring a futuristic sky garage where cars ride up to their front door. They fly via private jet through Nicholas Air, a $100,000 a year membership that grants them freedom to move family and careers as one. Their wealth extends to lavish cars. Rumored collections include Rolls-Royce and vintage Mercedes, alongside high-end timepieces reflecting Nicole's subtle taste. Properties in Beverly Hills and Tribeca not only enable privacy, but serve as smart, appreciating assets. She's also a brand ambassador for luxury labels like Chanel and Balenciaga. And as a producer, she owns ownership stakes in Blossom Films projects. They hold insurance policies covering health, production risk, and asset protection, ensuring their empire is safeguarded from volatility. The financial lesson here is clear. Diversify your wealth, guard your story, and invest in what aligns with your values, because true security comes from building not just income, but legacy. From a shy, stuttering child who felt unseen, Nicole Kidman has emerged as a woman whose life mirrors the complexity of her most powerful roles. She carried lost love, fractured family, silent grief, and turned them into empathy, artistry, and action. She did not ask for pity, nor did she parlay her pain into headlines. Instead, she walked through it, gracefully, resiliently, until every step forged something stronger. Her story closes not with a period, but with an ellipsis, because the journey continues. She loves without needing reciprocity. She gives without asking for thanks. She commands respect without demanding it. And maybe that's why the world loves her back. Not for her beauty, but for the quiet force that radiates from within. If Nicole Kidman's journey has moved you, if one of her performances slipped deep into your heart, share your moment below. Some souls give everything and ask for nothing. Thanks for joining Celebs Rewind on this journey that proves light sometimes comes from the deepest shadows.